It's official. 2020 Stanley Cup champions, Tampa Bay Lightning. I'm super happy for them, but in this video, I'm going to go over the 2020 playoffs. I'm going to go over each team, what went good, what went bad, and ultimately what led to the Lightning winning the Stanley Cup. But before we jump right into the video, I want to say I'm wearing this Rangers jersey because if you watched my collection video, the last one, you'd know that on the back, it's 27, Ryan McDonagh, Stanley Cup champion, Ryan McDonagh. I'm super happy for the Lightning, but let's jump right into the video. So, starting with the New York Rangers, they were swept. They scored 4 goals, and the guys that scored were Chris Kreider, Mark Stahl, Artemi Panarin, and Mika Zibanejad. That's it. They scored 4 goals in the series. They were swept 3-0. They lost. Strome had 2 assists though. Him along with Kreider, Panarin, and Zibanejad each had 3 points, but I mean, they were swept. What can you do? Moving on to the Florida Panthers, they looked like they were going to get swept by the Islanders, but they managed to push the series into Game 4. Still lost. Mike Hoffman scored 3 goals in the series. Barkov and Yandel each had 3 assists, and Hoffman led the way with 5 points. They did not have a good playoff run whatsoever. Maybe next year. Moving on to the Pittsburgh Penguins, I thought they'd sweep Montreal, and instead they almost got swept by them. So I did not expect that. Crosby and Zucker each had 2 goals. Getzel, Rust, and Sheary each had 2 assists. And then Crosby, Getzel, and Rust, 5 points. 3 points. But they did not have a good playoff run. It was very short. I'll see what they can do next year. I don't know if they'll make the playoffs, but we'll see. Moving on to the Toronto Maple Leafs. They were the last team to be eliminated in the qualifiers in general. And I expected them to win. They should have won. They had better offense. Their defense and goaltending wasn't as good going into the playoffs, but their offense was dominant. And the thing that was their downfall was that they couldn't score. With Marner, Matthews, Tavares, and Nylander on your team, you can't score. That's the Leafs. But anyway, Matthews, Tavares, and Nylander each had 2 goals. Matthews, Marner led the way with assists with 4. Well, and Matthews 6 points to lead the team. But they should have won. Okay, so moving on to the Winnipeg Jets. I also expected them to do better. I thought they would beat the Flames. They did not. Andrew Kopp and Nikolai Ehlers led the way with 2 goals. Assists, it was very weird. With 2, it was Adam Lowry, Dmitry Kulikov, Mark Roslovic, and Neil Pionk. And ultimately, Adam Lowry led the way with 3 points. So, they had a very short playoff run. I expected them to do better. If they can get that number 1 defenseman and that second line center that they desperately need, that'd be great. Moving on to the Nashville Predators. They should have beat the Coyotes. They should have, but they didn't. Darcy Kemper was outstanding, and that's why they didn't. But they should have. They have better offense, better defense, goaltending not so much, but they should have beat them. Philip Forsberg and Victor Arvidsson each had 3 goals. It was nice to see Arvidsson bounce back after a regular season. Ryan Johansson and Roman Josi each 4 assists. And then Forsberg and Johansson each had 5 points. Very short playoff run. Maybe they'll be better next year. Moving on to the Edmonton, McDavid, and Draisaitl's. Oilers. Sorry, Oilers fans. But anyway, McDavid dominated for them. 5 goals. Actually, look, at the end of the playoffs, McDavid still finished with the league's best goals per game. But anyway, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins really stepped up. I think he had 6 assists, and McDavid led the team with 9 points. but they should have beat the Blackhawks. Corey Crawford, I understand, was outstanding, but still, they should have beat them. You got McDavid and Draisaitl on your team, but their depth didn't show up, and that's why they lost. Moving on to the Minnesota Wild. They are the final team in the qualifiers that I'm going to talk about. I did not expect them to beat the Canucks. The fact that they won game 1 and pushed it to 4, I mean, they didn't push it. They looked like they were going to win the series in game 1. They shut out the Canucks. That was very surprising, but ultimately Vancouver came back and won 3 straight. Kevin Fiala led the way with 3 goals. Zach Parise, 3 assists. That was interesting. And then Fiala and Spurgeon, 4 points. So, I didn't expect them to do well in these playoffs, but it's something. So moving on to the first round and the Columbus Blue Jackets. They shouldn't have beat the Leafs in the qualifiers. The fact that they made the first round, I was very surprised. Korpisalo was outstanding, especially in that first game that went to 5/5 overtime. That was very fun to watch. But anyway, they lost in 5 to Tampa Bay. Pierre-Luc Dubois, outstanding. Team best, 4 goals. Team best, 6 assists. Team best, 10 points. He was outstanding for them, scoring that hat trick in Game 3 versus the Leafs. I mean, he's something special. I'm sure he'll get a huge raise. He's an RFA this year. I'd like to see what the Columbus Blue Jackets can do next year. Moving on to the Carolina Hurricanes, and they swept the Rangers and almost got swept by the Bruins. So the Bruins did beat them, but they were the better team here. Andrei Svechnikov, even though he got injured, led with 4 goals. Sebastian Aho, 9 assists. He was outstanding. And 12 points for Sebastian Aho. He had a great run. I think if Svechnikov didn't get hurt, maybe the Canes had a chance, but I don't know. He got hurt, and they lost. You can't change anything about that. Moving on to the Washington Capitals, and boy, do I have a lot to say here. So a lot of you guys might not know this, but they are my number 1 favorite team, and they should have beat the Islanders. They had better offense going in, not that good of defense, but goaltending, it was equal. Braden Holtby didn't have the best season, but we've seen what he can do. But the main thing that the Islanders had better, like what they did better at than the Caps, was that they had better coaching. Why? Because the Washington Capitals let go of Barry Trotz and let him go right to New York. That's why they lost. I mean, I'm not confident in saying this, but I think that Washington would have beat them if they had Barry Trotz. I think so. Prove me wrong. But anyway, Alex Ovechkin led the team with 4 goals. Surprise, surprise. John Carlson had the lead in assists with 6 and points with 6. Didn't score a single goal and nominated for the Norris. But I don't know. Once Ovechkin and Backstrom retire, I think this team is headed to rebuild mode. It's unfortunate, but I think that's what's best for the franchise. Moving on to the Montreal Canadiens. They actually had a pretty good playoff run. They beat Pittsburgh, which surprised me at least. And then against Philly, they did pretty well. Like, they pushed the series into Game 6. And who led the team goals? It was Nick Suzuki and Jesperi Kakaniemi. They each had 4. Drouin had 6 assists, so that was nice to see him bounce back. And then Drouin and Suzuki 7 points. So overall, I'd say they had a pretty decent playoff run. I think they surprised a lot of people, and I'd love to see what they can do after this. Moving on to the Chicago Blackhawks. They beat Edmonton, which surprised me. And then against Vegas, they didn't have a chance. Vegas is just a better team. There's nothing you could do about it. They have better offense, defense, and they have 2 starting goaltenders, one of which you gave away to them. But anyway, Robin Leonard was outstanding for them, and I think that's one of the main reasons why Chicago lost. But Jonathan Toews, Captain Series, led the way with 5 goals, which surprised me. Patrick Kane, 7 assists, and then Kane and Toews, 9 points. So the big 2 performed, and they just couldn't beat Vegas. They're not that good. Moving on to the Arizona Coyotes, they beat Nashville and then were destroyed by Colorado, giving up 7 goals in each of the last 2 games. Colorado straight up dominated. Darcy Kemper tried to do something, but there's nothing you can do against the Colorado Avalanche that can help you beat them. They were just that good in that series. But anyway, Clayton Keller had 4 goals. Taylor Hall, Demers, and Derek Stepan each had 4 assists. And then Keller ultimately led the way with 7 points. So, I think that they surprised some people, but they do not have that bright of a future, and I really don't know what's next for them. Moving on to the Calgary Flames. I think they're one of those teams that's every year you're here they go, here comes Calgary, and then they just don't do anything. I think they underachieved this year. Sam Bennett bounced back though with 5 goals. Same thing with Sean Monahan, who had 6 assists. And Bennett and Monahan had 6 points each. So I think those 2 had a pretty decent run, and maybe Gaudreau. But Tkachuk got injured, and I think that kind of ruined their chances. But maybe next year. We'll see. Moving on to St. Louis, I think they majorly underachieved. I expected them to do much, much better. They didn't. Ryan O'Reilly performed with 4 goals. Same thing with Jaden Schwartz and David Perron, who surprised everyone this regular season and in these playoffs. He's just been outstanding. When it comes to assists, O'Reilly led the way with 7 and 11 points. O'Reilly also led the way. He was their best player by far in these playoffs. So moving on to the Boston Bruins, I don't like the Bruins, and I don't think... they're one of those teams where they're either at the top or near the bottom, because they're fun to watch, not fun when your team plays them. But anyway, Brad Marchand led the way with 7 goals. Yeah, okay. Next, what's next? Krejci, 8 assists, and then those 2 had 12 points each. But they lost to the Tampa Bay Lightning. I know there was the whole goalie controversy between Rask and Halak, where Rask left and Halak was just thrown into the starter role. I personally don't blame Rask. I think he made the right decision, but we'll see if he comes back next year. Moving on to the Colorado Avalanche, they were outstanding. McKinnon straight up dominated with he had 9 goals, which was actually tied with Nazem Kadri. 16 assists, 25 points. He was great for them. They managed to push the series into Game 7 in the second round against Dallas with Michael Hutchinson in net, their 3rd goalie. Francouz, injured. Grubauer, injured. Eric Johnson, their number 1 defenseman, other than Cale Makar, injured. Game 7, their captain, Gabriel Landeskog, injured. They ran into injury problems and a second problem, and that problem's name is Joel Kiviranta, scoring a hat trick, including the overtime winner against the Avs in Game 7 of the second round, sending them to the conference finals. It was unfortunate, but I'm sure they'll be back here in no time. Moving on to the Vancouver Canucks, they beat the Blues, which surprised me. And then they managed to push the series into a Game 7 against Vegas because of one person, and that person is Thatcher Demko. When Markstrom was ruled unfit to play, Demko took over, started 3 elimination games, and won 2 of them. He was outstanding for them, but in Game 7, they just couldn't perform. But in the series, Bo Horvat led the way with 10 goals, Quinn Hughes 14 assists, and then Elias Pettersson and JT Miller 18 points. So this is kind of weird because one guy leads the team in goals, another guy leads them in assists, and then 2 completely separate guys tie for the lead in points. What do you call that? 2020. But anyway, moving on to the Philadelphia Flyers. They were great. Absolutely amazing in the qualifiers. I mean, the round robin. First round, kind of, not crisp. Let's just say that. I think Montreal took them too far. They should have beat them in 5. The fact that they took them to 6. And then they forced Game 7 after being down 3-1 in the series to the Islanders. But in the final game, they just couldn't score. And that's why they lost. But anyway, Scott Laughton led the team with 5 goals. Kevin Hayes 9 assists and 13 points. So Hayes was pretty good for them, but other than that, Giroux didn't really perform. Konechny didn't perform offensively either. Same thing with Couturier and Voracek. Hayes, when it comes to assists and points, he was good, but goals, not really. But I'm sure they'll be back here as well. Moving on to the Vegas Golden Knights. I thought they should have beat Dallas. I thought that they should have went to the Stanley Cup Finals. In my official bracket, I'm pretty sure I had them winning the Stanley Cup. But, they went pretty far. I think they'll be back here. They should resign Robin Lehner. Marc-Andre Fleury, they'll probably either trade him or, ride with both of them. They have a tough goalie situation. But if they can resign Leonard, that will be the first step. But anyway, Alex Tuch stepped up from the third line, leading the team with 8 goals. And Shea Theodore had an outstanding playoffs, 12 assists, 19 points. He was great for them, but their offense, their scoring touch was just taken away in the conference finals. That's why they lost. Moving on to the New York Islanders. They made it pretty far. The conference finals, that's amazing. But they just couldn't quite get through Tampa Bay. They've beat mostly offensive teams. Florida, that's an offensive team. Washington, offensive team. Philadelphia, offensive team. They shut them down, but Tampa is a whole new level. You just couldn't keep up with them. They were outplayed, outworked, outshot, outscored, and beaten. They did manage to push it to Game 6. Jordan Elberle with that double OT winner. That was nice, but in the end, Game 6, overtime, Anthony Cirelli kills them with what shouldn't have went in, but it did. Cirelli wins it, and the Islanders are eliminated. Brock Nelson and Anthony Beauvillier each had 9 goals to lead the team. Josh Bailey, outstanding, led the team in assists with 18 and points with 20. He was excellent when it comes to assists and points, frankly. But I think they'll be back here sooner rather than later, but I don't know. They're a more defensive favorite team. But the one thing that I sure hope that they do is re-sign RFAs Matt Barzal and Ryan Pulock. If they do that, I'm sure they'll be a competitive team next year. And then, the Stanley Cup Finals. Let me start with the losing team, the Dallas Stars. Joe Pavelski was outstanding. 13 goals. Miro Heiskanen, dominant. Led the team with 20 assists and 26 points. He was great for them as well. Corey Perry really stepping up in the finals, winning that Game 5 in double overtime for Dallas. It was nice to see him do well. Same thing with Joe Pavelski. They had like bad regular seasons, but really good playoffs. But like I said, they're a defensive favorite team, just like the New York Islanders, but they just can't defend against Tampa Bay. They were able to take Game 1 and Game 5, but Games 2, 3, 4, and 6, Tampa beat them. I know that there was this controversy in, I believe it was Game 4, Kevin Shattenkirk's overtime goal, that there was a penalty to Jamie Benn that probably should have been a penalty, but I'm done complaining about refs. As we all know, that does not work. But it is what it is. They lost. They still had a great playoff run. I don't see them being back here in the future, but anything can happen. I didn't expect them to be here at all. And now, the Stanley Cup champions, Tampa Bay Lightning. Let's start with the leading scorers. Braden Point, 14 goals. And then Nikita Kucherov, 27 assists, 34 points. Outstanding. They were great. Victor Hedman, I believe, had like 10 goals, I'm pretty sure. That's like one of the highest totals that has ever been recorded by a defenseman in the playoffs. He had a great playoff run, winning the Conn Smythe. And then depth players, I mean, not really depth players, but like other supporting players stepped up, like Andre Palat, Alex Killorn, Tyler Johnson, Anthony Cirelli, and their depth players like Yanni Gourde, Blake Coleman, Barclay Goodrow really stepped up. I believe Blake Coleman led the playoffs in hits. That was really good for them. But everything just clicked for them. Their defense was amazing with not only Victor Hedman, but Ryan McDonough was great defensively. Same thing with Zach Bogosian. Kevin Shattenkirk got on the board a couple of times. And then guys like Luke Shen and Ruda also. They were great. Like, the whole team was great. Goaltending, Andrei Vasilevsky, off the charts. And speaking of goaltending, Anton Khudobin for Dallas, I'd like to congratulate him. He was great, especially in those first 3 rounds, and especially in the conference finals. I think that's where he was like at his top. But Tampa Bay won. They were the better team. They are the best team in the NHL. It's official. Let's party. So with that, that is it. Thank you so much for watching. I know this video was a little longer, but I wanted to go over every team. Please make sure to like if you enjoyed. Also subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Follow me on Instagram, and I'll see you later. Let's keep it rolling. Let's keep it popping.